The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast NH. This is a podcast designed by writers for writers on the journey to being published. Joined Mandra Biscornet.
It was so healthy and nutritious.
Deborah Monk.
Can we open each podcast with a dance number?
Shelley Devlin.
It was so full of inspiration and sparkles.
Every Tuesday morning live on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to catch the podcast anytime on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast catcher. It's time to be inspired, feel empowered, and be well with the Writer's Block Podcast NH.
And welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Mandra.
I'm Debbie.
And I'm Shelley. Thank you for joining us here at the Writer's Block, where our mission is to inspire, empower, and to help people be well. We're streaming live on Facebook from the Studio 21 Podcast Café. And today on our show, we're going to be talking about where writers get their inspiration from, specifically for the characters that they develop. What does an author draw on to create relatable characters that the reader can truly connect with? Where does that inspiration come from? So, joining us today is one of Deb's most significant influences, her daughter, live and in person, Miss Sophie Monk. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sophie.
Thanks for having me.
We are so excited to have you here and to talk about what, if any, similarities you see in the characters that your mom creates and yourself.
Well, we'll have a lot to talk about
Yeah,
then because
we
pretty
will.
much the entire book.
I'm in there too.
Exactly.
Well, we can also talk to Mr. Jonathan as well, because it sounds like Deb uses people she knows to inspire her characters.
I take the fifth. I have no idea what you're talking about.
If you know her at all, you even know who each character is, so it's easy to pick up on.
So let's get started. What kind of struck you as you read her book?
So because this one isn't a memoir, it is a bit hard to differentiate between the two of what is inspiration coming from her real life and what she has come up with on her own. But I think, and it's interesting, it'll be fun to talk about because a lot of scenes I'll read and I will know exactly when and where she was talking about, what conversation that came from. But sometimes I wonder, is it the same conversation that she actually thought of when she was writing each scene, if we're going back, because a lot of it is when I was a teenager.
Right.
So am I thinking of a different time than what she's
So
thinking
not
of?
only is she inspired by you for a character, but she's actually pulled out conversations or moments that you may have had. Maybe they're not exactly written that way, but
it's usually things that, kind of conversations you have with a mom multiple times. So that's
Yes,
why it's like,
okay.
is it the exact conversation I'm thinking of, or was she picking up from another time?
right.
Yeah.
Should we read a few?
Sure.
I want to know if Sophie gets any financial compensation for being such an inspiration.
No, I
Yeah.
think that's in the fine print in the back.
No,
that
I think
says
she gets
Sophie's
half
the
a
one
shoelace.
that gets by her mother the house at the ocean.
She gets everything of mine anyway, so that's the beauty of having one child. And I will admit, it's just a coincidence that both of my novels, the woman only has one girl. That
Really?
is just random.
That is not a coincidence. I have to tell you, Deb, when I got Searching for Julia Stone, which is the original, which will be worth
first.
a lot of money because it will be the first run of Julia Stone.
Oh, you have
Searching
right.
for Julia Stone. And I didn't know you that well.
Right.
And although it was fiction, I wanted to know you more when I got done reading the book. And you were like, but it's not me. And I'm like, but I think it is you.
Deb's in
Thank
denial.
you. I've been saying this.
Yes.
Right?
Deb has a lot of denial around this. She does not think that she
does.
pulls these influences from her life, but
Well,
we try to tell her
yeah.
differently. All right, so let's read.
So here's one from my first book, Searching for Julia Stone. Her name is Katie. The daughter. Katie knocks on the door and pushes it open without waiting for an answer. My tween daughter, a term I thought stood for early teenager, but now know stands for Sybil-like personality changes that are as dangerous as a great white shark, crouches at the foot of my bed, waiting for me to sign her note. I look at her, blame the early morning light for the fact that I can't quite read it, and pretend to look it over. I figure if it's a note telling me she's failing out of school or that she got detention for some hormone-induced crime, Katie'll fidget. I stare at her over the paper, waiting for a guilty sign, kidding myself that I can still still read her. She sighs, the quintessential sound of adolescence, and points to the line I'm supposed to sign.
Now listen, I know Sophie's going to talk about this, but that's the exact, I'm not kidding you, the exact paragraph I pulled out of Julia Stone, and I don't know if this one could even be whale-eating shark person. No, I know, but I picked the same one.
Oh, you picked the same one.
The same one.
Really?
Because I thought that was typical adolescence, but she's so sweet. Did she really have that?
I'm blessed with the dimples.
That's a good one.
And she uses them. Of course, I mean, I know what it's like to raise a daughter. Like, both of you have sons.
Right.
And I don't know what it's like to raise a son. Now, that doesn't mean I can't write a character who has sons. I did grow up with brothers, and I have friends who have brothers. So I could imagine what that's like. But it's different having a boy. A girl has that disdain for her mother that just goes on for years, where she's tearing you down with that sigh that just wilts you. Your own self-worth wilts you. And that's what a daughter does to you. And so...
Sophie, it's okay.
Wow.
We're glad you're here.
Congratulations.
And so I felt like I could write that well. So did that scene actually happen? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. I do actually. The funny thing is, I really only think that happened one time. I can only think of one time that it genuinely may have been a little different than what I told you were signing. But most of the time, I was pretty honest. I didn't get in trouble at school that much. I saved that for at home.
Right. That much.
So I really didn't get in trouble that much. But so I can see where that whole scene came from. Absolutely.
So you're saying you once gave me a note and had me sign something and tricked me?
One time, yeah.
See, I didn't even know.
Well, because you historically lose things like your reading glasses and your phone and your laptop. So without having your glasses, I can see her pulling that off.
And also in the morning, especially when I was at school really early in the morning, she'd...
Not a morning person.
No.
Wow. See, now I did not know that.
Now you realize anything that you say today can and will be held against you in the next book.
No, it can't, because it's what happens on the Writer's Block podcast, NH stays here. It's like
here.
Las Vegas.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Facebook Live.
Exactly.
To the world.
Should have done this before I left, not when I moved back home.
Skyping in.
Oh, please. She can get away with anything.
So what else? What else do we have to read?
Well, I have another one from Well-Behaved Woman.
Yeah.
So this book was written more recently. Let's see. Here we go. I marked it. Now she's 15. And this daughter's name is Sophia.
Oh, yeah. That's that's not inspired
So
at
different.
all.
So
right.
It's not the same name at all.
Right.
So my 15-year-old daughter comes down the stairs wearing a tank top and a skirt that is so small I swear I have underwear that would cover more. I'm surprised my eyeballs don't fall right out of my head and roll across the floor. I look at Bob sitting at the table with his newspaper. Normally he leaves discipline to me. Can't sully the father-daughter love fest gag fest that they have going on. Most of the time I'm convinced the only reason they pretend to have this wonderful father-daughter bond is to bug me. Surely this time he'll be on my side. There's no way he'll let his princess leave the house looking like a tramp. A good-looking tramp, but a tramp nonetheless. Then I catch her glance. Her eyes are challenging me as if she can read my mind, as if she knows when I remember when I didn't need a bra, when the right song could entice my breast to break free and dance naked on the ocean cliffs, when I still believed that secretly inside I really was part mermaid, part fairy, and part yet to be discovered. Before the weight of life anchored me inside this middle-aged body that looks like every other middle-aged woman, the one I swore I would never have. The body my daughter is now looking at with complete disdain and the utter conviction that she will never end up like me. I wish I could flash forward in time and take a picture of her and bring it back to now and wave it in her face. Of course she will be me. She will be middle-aged with a husband hiding behind his paper and a daughter staring at her with contempt. If only I could tell her the truth, to enjoy what she has now, her youth, her vitality, that she doesn't need to flaunt it to the world, that it's hers and it's temporary and it should be savored and cherished. I'd also tell her that as much as she feels like she owns her own power, it's not really hers, it's on loan. It's temporary and has a definite return date, and that date will be here long before she has the wisdom to appreciate it. It's only when it's gone and she sees it standing in front of her in the form of her own daughter that she will realize the magnitude of what she's lost. I'm sorry, I say, for so much more than she can imagine, but you cannot leave the house like that. Mom, she says, her voice an escalating whine. This is what everyone wears. Sophia Rose, I say, trying the full name thing. She pulls the skirt down to cover some of her legs, thinking she's compromising, but the effort loses its effect when her belly gets exposed. I look to Bob, but he's still hiding behind his newspaper. Come on, Mom, she says, her tone vacillating as she decides on the direction of her argument. 1, I say, a throwback to the days when she was young and I could count. Mom, she yells yells, half daring me, challenging me. I haven't used this strategy in years. 2. Seriously, she yells. We stare at each other, eyes wide. Neither of us is sure as what the other is going to do. When she was young, I never got past 2, so we don't know what happens at 3. Thankfully, she stomps back up the stairs, muttering something about me ruining her life. That was close. I better not try this counting thing again, because next time she won't respond out of habit.
Oh, Sophie.
I'd like to object to a discrepancy in there.
Yes,
everybody
you don't read the
knows
newspaper.
I don't read, so
So clearly it can't be
that
you.
is, this Bob character is not based on me.
There must be another one that's based on you, Jonathan.
But Sophie, do you remember that?
I feel like that probably happened more than once.
Oh, no.
Did it not? Then no, I don't. I don't remember this exact time.
We were in the house in Derry, and you walked by, and I tried the 1, 2, 3, and your eyes like glared at me, like it
Like,
was.
oh, you're going to play dirty pool right now?
It was like she looked at me and thought, "How dare you think that
Right.
will work with me?" That was look on one.
Because she was probably over 10 when that stopped
yeah.
working.
Well, and I hadn't used it for years. I probably hadn't used
Yeah.
it since she was in middle school when we lived in Nashua. And it just came out. I was at a loss. And both of us, our eyes, there was like a literal battle back and forth. And I honestly knew she did. She looked at me as she went around the corner of the stairs and she glared at me and she literally said, "Never again." I mean, she didn't say it out loud. And I knew I better not use it. But I used that counting thing again later in the book.
Yeah.
And I think I used it so
you did.
effectively.
Yeah, you did.
But I've never used it again in real life because it wouldn't work.
Was
This time she would just laugh.
it over like a wardrobe
It was-
discrepancy or?
I don't remember
or
the
just
details,
something
but it
else?
was one
Was
of those arguments that you just have a million times that you feel defeated and you kind of, you've run out of ways to say.
Yeah.
I'll say that I'm grateful that I'm reading this book now because I don't think I now see where she's coming from. At the time, I probably didn't think I was dressed as poorly as I probably was.
Right.
So it is kind of funny for me now. And I also say that is one of my favorite scenes that a character influenced by me has been a part of, because anyone who knows my mom and knows our relationship, I don't think my mom could ever say a bad word about me. And so it's nice to finally hear a time that it wasn't so, like, she'll say I have whatever sass attitude and whatnot. I'm not perfect, but it's funny to read something so genuine and so not good. Mm-hmm. And in a time that I was 1000% wrong, whether I should have been dressed that way or not, she told me to change. Do you know? So it's just really interesting to see.
Well, and you're at a really monumental age right now too, to look back at this. Like you're a woman now, you're not a kid. And it's good for you to look back on that. I want to know if you're going to write a book and your mom is going to be a character in the book someday.
I think that would be a lot of fun. I don't know. I don't think I'm as talented as my mom, so I don't know if I'd be able to.
You just need
But
to
I
listen
think
to
if
the
I
writer's
could,
block. You'll be fine.
I said to her, I don't know much at the time what you guys are talking about exactly because I'm not a writer. But I said maybe I should start and I can develop something from it as well.
But what's so interesting about what you were saying is that the perspective that you have now to go back and read a scene like that, whereas if you were 15 or 16 and you were reading that book, it would have just sort of amplified, arguments and whatnot.
From a character development standpoint, that type of scene, we all have gone through that. And me as a dad, I've had the conversation with Sophie before about, okay, that outfit's pushing the boundaries. We've all had that conversation, but more important than that, how the conversation plays out, the word choice that you use, Deb, brings to light not only that tense moment, but also how deep your relationship is in that book, the mom to the daughter, and how much respect, even though the times are trying, how much respect she had still for her mom.
Yeah.
And that bond could not be broken. We get to 2 and the storming off. It's so important, I think, at that spot in the book for the mom to win that battle so that people reading the book don't think that the kid grows up to be a derelict. It's obvious. All right, we still have some control here.
Right.
Not much, but
Not much. No. Holding on by a thread.
But there's a little bit of respect.
There's a little
that's
upper
still
hand
there.
happening still.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you find when you're having conversations with people now, and this could be for our entire panel, as you're having conversations with people, are you viewing these conversations as potential scenes in a book? And how can we tell this story in an interesting way, even more interesting than perhaps what's playing out?
Yes, and yes. Every day.
Shelley, are you sure?
I'm positive.
Well, Shelley has like 12 books coming, so
Exactly.
every day of Shelley's life is a potential new chapter.
I let people know that now.
Well, in
I was
your
gonna say,
case,
I'm gonna
though,
remember
in your
that.
case, I don't want you using this as an excuse not to continue writing and finishing the book. So that's not that this is not a pass for you.
Good call, Jonathan.
But in
Good
your
call.
case, Mandra, where your book, you're pretty much done this book. So now,
Correct.
as you're having interactions, are you looking toward the next book and using potential interactions with people?
I think I try to remember things that are happening because I do potentially have a second book. I'm not so great about writing down the interactions or the experiences, but I'm trying to think, oh, that would be a good one to include, when they happen, and just try to pay attention a little bit more.
I'm interested. I think that you're at some point in your life, your relationship with your son, I see it on Facebook, and you are blown away sometimes by what he says. You're obviously enamored by him, but you're watching this little man become a little man every single day, and being able to see it in your eyes on Facebook is awesome. I think you have a potential book there.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So I try to have that perspective when I'm interacting with him to maybe pull back a little bit and not always be jumping right in as mom, but to pull back a little bit and really see kind of the beauty in what he's doing,
that
the
kid's
humor in
literary
what
gold.
he's doing.
He's literary gold.
He is his own novel, I guess. So.
And what about you, Deb? Are you still looking at your interactions with people and deciding whether or not these interactions could be a future scene?
For me, it's the feeling. It's always about the feeling. In that scene, it's we all have that moment, those moments where we're trying to hold on. We know we're supposed to be in control and we're barely able to do it. So for me, it's when I feel a feeling, then I can kind of say, okay, what scene, what conversation, how would I have that play out the best? Because I use that counting thing later in the book, and it's a really pivotal moment. Every time I read it, I cry. Because I can imagine
Here
doing
we go.
it.
I knew it was going to
A lot
happen
of work
today.
just
I knew we weren't going to get through this without a tear.
I didn't bring my tissues to do my...
Oh, this is great. I mean, everybody's crying.
Yeah, so so I guess that. So
And
it's
that's
always
true,
about the
'cause, Deb,
feeling.
we have sat before, and you have had feelings come out when we've been in the kitchen, and I won't give anything away, but I have titled your books for you. You have had a feeling come out, and I'm like, whoa, there's the title right there, and you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
And then the story just starts playing.
Right. So
You are
I start
definitely
with
all
the
on
feeling, and
emotion
then
the
it goes
feeling.
to the other way.
Yeah.
And it's how do you express? Where do you express? What scene or which characters can express?
So
that
when
feeling
you
the
were
best?
writing, did you already, how did that scene, that counting scene, end up in there? Was it you already had that memory and you knew you wanted to put it in there, or did it just sort of, you think it organically happened?
To be honest, I really wish I knew the answer to that question. I wish I knew if it was, I don't remember which one, if I wrote the first scene and then I was able to use it later, or if I wrote it later and then had to go back and put it in. I think that I'm pretty sure I wrote the first scene just because I remembered that moment with her so clearly, and I just thought it showed that feeling of knowing that you're losing control as a mom as they're getting older, that your ability to control what they do and the choices they make are literally being
limited,
pulled out of
yes.
your hands.
Right.
And so I used it then.
Do you wish
so-
that I was a reader? Is that why you made me a reader in the book? Because I can't get past that.
He's back, clearly, he is back on the fact that he doesn't read the newspaper.
I'm called a tramp, and he's upset that he
Yes, right?
That is awesome.
If he had been smoking a cigar, would you have preferred that? He was
That
too
would be
busy.
nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Well, since that character is not based on you either. But anyway. Yeah.
Denial.
I think with my mom's books, and I could be wrong about this because, like I said, I'm not an author, but I think a lot of my mom, as you can see, is a very emotional person. And
No.
so I think she builds off that and makes storylines from that rather than scenes, characters, ideas, plots. I think that she feels emotions and she wants to be able to get other people to feel those emotions as well.
Right.
And I think that's why she can use her life and Jonathan and myself so much for inspiration, because she's felt those emotions with us, so then she has places to grab from rather than having a storyline or a plot or something that she wants to build around. She builds around different emotions. So this one obviously is about the mother-daughter relationship and etc. And that's where she gets these stories, and it's easy to pull from her own life because they're emotions she's felt, so she's had experiences to put them in. And so I think that is a big part. I think a big part of your writing that I notice reading your books compared to other books.
It's
Well said.
I couldn't do it without it.
Jonathan, Sophie reads.
She does. She's a reader.
She is a reader.
She's a reader.
She reads her mommy's books.
Anything else before we take a short walk around the neighborhood about kind of seeing yourself in some of these characters? Because we don't often get to talk to like the people, that inspired the,
I think personally, because me and my mom are so close, I think I would be a little offended if I didn't find that. But it's also, I think it's a little difficult with the style of, because we haven't gotten into memoirs or anything yet in this style of book, because I don't know what is based on me and what isn't. So I could be taking things that she really genuinely just made up and it's not me, but I'm reading it as myself because I relate myself to that character.
Sure.
And same with Jonathan. And even just all the characters, I know I can find someone in her life in each character.
Well, that was going to be my other question. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you see other acquaintances, family members, in there? Even
when sometimes I'll see little bits in different people, like I see my mom very much in both the Mel character and the Jody character. So even though one of them's meant to be her mom, I can still see my mom so much in it. So
you see me in both the characters?
Yeah.
You do?
I do, yeah.
I show up in the book?
Well, I would say...
There's a whole mind...
I would say
that part didn't occur to me.
It's depending on the position you are in your personal life as you're reading any book. And again, going back to your word choice, Deb, if in Sophie's case where she's the younger person reading the book, she's going to read that book from the perspective of the younger person. An older person who's a mom could be both. They could be reading it and saying, oh, I had that conversation with my mom when I was a kid, or I've had that conversation with my daughter, or at some point I'm going to have that conversation with my daughter. Yes. So being able to paint such a great scene and making it so vivid makes it very easy for the person just to fall right into the story.
Well, believe me, the conversation in the car on the way home is going to be, how do you think I'm Mel and Jody? Anyhow.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it too. Well, this was really great having some interesting
sound
walking around the neighborhood music there.
Hold on, we have a call here.
There's a call coming in.
I didn't play that on the piano.
Shell, would you like to start with a walk around the neighborhood?
So my latest update on As the Chair Turns is that sometimes you need to call a lifeline, because the last time I was at the cabin, I typed up some amazing one-liners, right? We'll call them.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I sit and talk with the people that are close to me, that know me as Shelley the hairdresser, or Shelley the friend, or their mom, or their daughter, or the cousin, the sister-in-law, all of that, they remember stories that I forget. So I yesterday sent out a questionnaire to 12 of my little circles and said, what is the saddest story I have ever told you from standing behind the chair? What is the happiest story?
Wow.
Why would you buy this book? And
oh my
it was
God,
just,
she's
it was
already
like,
doing marketing surveys.
and I said, could you check out shelleydevlin.life, my website, and give me any feedback and some criteria on what I need to do and add. So I'm going to wait for those. I got 2 of them back already out of the 12. And some great stories and some stories that I had forgotten about. So
she's
brilliant. Exciting.
On to writing again. So that's where I'm at.
So you've gotten your inspiration tank filled up just by reaching out to some others. Great.
Very smart.
All right. Deb,
what do you got?
2 little quick things. Last week, I spoke to Dave here at Two Guys Smoke Shop, and he, for the holidays, is going to carry my gift package for all those gentlemen who smoke cigars and want to buy a little present for their wife, and for the wives who are coming in to buy presents, Christmas presents for their husbands, and they'll have something. And also,
wonderful.
This weekend, I filmed the Laverne and Shirley little
trailer,
little video.
Okay.
Little something. I got to figure out what I
think
call
she called
these
it
things.
Didio. A little Didio.
My little Didio.
A little Didio book trailer.
And my darling Sophie's going to edit it this week for me, and so hopefully that'll be up within a week.
Nice.
All right. So we'll see that in about a week on your...
I think so, on my Facebook.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I didn't think that I had to walk around the neighborhood, but then something showed up in the mail yesterday. that was a pleasant surprise. When I went to Harvard Medical School's writing, publishing, social media conference, one thing that the director, Julie Silver, had us do was write a letter to ourselves about where we wanted to see ourselves in our book writing journey in, the next 6 months or so. And then she collected them all, put them in an envelope, and apparently, I had totally forgotten that we even did this exercise. She mailed them out. So mine showed up yesterday in the mail. I was like, well, that's interesting. Let's see what I wrote.
Let's see what I had to say to myself.
Yeah. So this was June, I think, that I went. Yeah.
Nice.
So I wrote, Dear Mandra, good job talking with agents and coaches at the conference. Susan Aiello offered to read a few pages at no charge. Make sure you send the pages. Tackle LinkedIn as a platform. I know. I'm working on it, though.
It's okay.
Apparently, I had 2 LinkedIn accounts, so just realizing that I already had 2, that was, some work there. Your idea is a good one and can catapult you into a new career of speaking and consulting. Good job investing in yourself, spending time learning more about the writing process, publishing process, and social media. Good job navigating buses, trains, and subways to get here. I hope this finds you moving along in the process, still passionate, happy, and healthy. The universe is listening. Continue to capture the energy.
Oh,
wow.
Wasn't that awesome that
really
it came like snail mail to your house? Like, how fun.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It was a really cool concept. And I'm glad she did it. And it is a little nudge, like, okay, I've kind of done this thing, but I haven't really tackled the LinkedIn thing, so let's do that.
I think we should do that at our next kitchen meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we'll give them
Write that-
to Jonathan to hold on to. Jonathan, will you hold on to some letters for us?
He
Sure.
yeah.
Or Sophie.
We might
and
have to
she
give them.
can mail
but
them.
6 months from now, God only knows
Well,
where they'll
maybe
be coming
they'll come from
I'm going to
Africa,
bring 3
who
self-addressed
knows?
stamped envelopes with me to
Yes,
the kitchen.
put that
you are,
down.
yes.
Put that down.
Can you make it 4?
Yes.
Because we'll give one to Sophie too.
Absolutely.
So on next week's show, actually, Deb will be flying solo because Shelly and I aren't here. So there will be some new kids on the block. Please be sure.
Tune in to see who we have.
Yes, tune in to see who will be covering for us. Thank you for listening. Thank you to the Studio 21 Podcast Café. And please check us out on the Writer's Block NH Facebook and the Writer's Block Podcast. May you be inspired, feel empowered, and be well.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.